Hi, Geeksters. Welcome to Geeksterilia's podcast, your favorite podcast about series and movies with sci-fi and fantasy theme, as well as pop culture in general. My name is Cecilia, and here's another episode, English spoken episode. And today we're going to talk about the Justice League, the Zack Snyder Cut. And my friend Amy is here, so very ready to talk about it. How's it going,
Extremely
Amy?
ready. I have been talking about this with my friends obsessively, and I co-host a movie podcast. Shout out to John Webster Film, aka Cinematic Realms. Check him out on YouTube. So we talk about movies, but we're taking a break right now, and I was brimming with thoughts and feelings about Justice League. I'm a DC fan in general. I got my Wonder Woman shirt on today. And I grew up watching the Justice League animated series. I'm obsessed with Justice League. And when the Justice League, if you will, when the Joss cut came out, I was very sad and disappointed. And so when I heard that this was coming, I prepared myself, and I'm very, very excited to talk about it.
I know. I know. I wanted to invite you for this episode, and we weren't quite. I wasn't quite sure about the topic, but everyone was talking about the Justice League and the Snyder Cut. Actually, they're talking about both versions.
Yeah, lots of compare and contrast undergrad essays I've seen. I teach undergrads. I'm a PhD student, and yeah, a lot of comparing and contrasting going on by people online. It was like they all had an assignment. But I myself, have been comparing and contrasting the two this whole time. So
yes, so do I.
That's kind of the framework with which we have to talk about these movies, because it is not the canon cinematic released version. So,
which is such a shame, I must say. Well, to be honest, I do have to say something. I'm not a huge comic book fan, neither DC nor Marvel. So my knowledge about this whole universe, it's not too reliable. Yeah, but I do enjoy movies. But especially that the official version, I didn't watch it until yesterday. And then I watched.
I got you to watch it! Yay!
I watched both
My
versions.
evil plan to get Cecilia to watch the things I like is going excellent.
Yeah, and it was pretty shocking how different they are.
Yeah.
And well, anyone who has seen both versions would agree that there are pretty much two different movies, even though they point A and point B are the same.
Yeah,
but
how they get there,
how they get there is very different.
Yeah,
and well, there is one thing that I do like about the Whedon, the official version,
the Justice League.
The Justice League. It's just that, well, the comic relief parts are pretty okay, but all of the other, the rest of the movie doesn't make any sense.
So I will say, though, the idea of the mother boxes and Steppenwolf and Darkseid, if you were not familiar with a lot of DC comics, it seems like a lot at once. So I understand that I have a lot more context going into these movies than a lot of people. But they also did something. Snyder did something with this alternate universe where Superman goes bad. That Joss was just like, nah. Like Game of Thrones fans will know, it's like with whole characters just being removed. And I think it is extremely problematic that one of the characters that was removed is Martian Manhunter, who does transform into a man of color. And then we also have Cyborg, a man of color, with a much lesser role in the Justice League, the Joss Whedon cut. To the point where it's like, Joss, this is 2021. We know not to do this anymore. We know to have representation on screen. Why do we keep having to have this conversation with you, Joss? You are so frustrating.
That's because he's a racist.
I mean, yeah,
And
I'm not a
yeah.
big Joss. I mean, I like Buffy.
Mhm,
Like a lot of the stuff he's done, but I'm not a fan of him as a person. So
mhm,
that's gonna come out a little bit. But that being said, I wasn't necessarily a Zack Snyder fan. I liked Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman. I didn't hate as much as everyone else did. But I think that the storytelling that Snyder gives us is a lot more complete and a lot the characters. I care more about the characters and their
mhm,
motivations. And yeah, it is 4 hours long, so he has more time. But it's not just that. Had a storytelling vision that he saw through. Joss, not so much.
mhm. Well, maybe it is. Well, me as a person who hasn't watched all the movies, for example, I haven't watched Man of Steel or Batman v Superman, but what I can tell you as a, I don't know, a novice viewer,
Yeah.
uh, someone who has who I'm the average viewer who doesn't have the comic knowledge or the movie knowledge, right?
Hmm.
The movie canon knowledge. It's just that, well, the Whedon version doesn't make sense. Well, like I said, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because it doesn't explain many of the things that are happening. You don't know why the boxes are so important.
Yeah.
Why? What do they have to do with Superman? And they briefly tell you, but you don't really get. You don't really get it. It's
Yeah.
it's all happening so fast that you don't have time to actually think
Yeah.
and get the idea of what's happening.
So
So,
something that a lot of film critics right now have been writing about is letting scenes breathe. And
mhm,
Snyder's cut does that. From
mhm,
scene to scene, you do have
yeah,
time to contemplate the major themes that are going on in the movie.
mhm,
Whereas with the Joss Whedon cut, it is really from one to the next,
mhm,
and you kind of lose the central focus of the movie. And also, I will say right now, my least favorite thing about the Joss cut is not in the Snyder cut, and that is the weird sexual tension between Steppenwolf and the mother boxes. Like, it's really weird. He's like, "Don't touch mother" in the
mhm.
Joss cut, and it's creepy. And Joss, like, Freud would be all over Joss Whedon, is what I'm saying. So when Snyder came and it was like, yeah, they still called mother boxes and they do turn into like kind of skeletal women at the end. There isn't that weird Freudian complex with your mom that is just always makes me uncomfortable in movies. And I thank you for that, Zack Snyder. I thank you for that.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I was more shocked about because, well, in the Snyder version, we have another character that y- Steppenwolf is actually talking to. He's serving this other
Yes.
character,
He's
and
calling home and updating them on what's going on.
yeah, yeah, and we don't see that in the official version, which
Yeah.
is completely nuts.
Yeah. You understand why Steppenwolf is doing what he's doing. He's been disgraced. He needs to prove to Darkseid, the leader of this planet, who is the eater of worlds. He's taken over all of these worlds, and if you get to live, you worship Darkseid. That's what Darkseid is. If you're not a
Hmm.
comics fan,
Hmm.
so Darkseid way up here. And then it looked like Steppenwolf was kind of serving him, but no, this lower Steppenwolf, not only is he having to go through an intermediary to talk to Darkseid, he used to be next to Darkseid, and he had a
Hmm.
fall from grace. Huge backstory to Steppenwolf. Why is he so eager to prove himself on this world?
Hmm.
Because he has
He
been
messed it up.
disgraced. Yeah.
Yeah, because he
He's
messed
like
it up in the
Zuko
past.
in Avatar Last Air, but he's like, for honor, I must restore my honor. And that's exactly what he's doing. So his motivations make sense, and so many other
Yeah.
characters' motivations make sense because Snyder cut this
Yeah,
movie.
because there's time to explain what's going on in their minds, right? And yeah, for example, I don't like when villains don't really when you don't really understand the motive of the villain. For example, there are so many stories that the villain is just like, I want power for,
Yeah.
or I want to dominate the world. Yeah, but what are you going to do when you dominate the world? What's the
Yeah.
point of, you know?
Yeah.
And it's pretty stupid. That motivation is pretty stupid. And that's pretty much what we see on the official version of the movie. But in this version, like you said, we get to know that he messed up in the past, that he tried to do
Yeah.
this in the past, and he blew it up, and now He's trying to gain some respect from his community, from his leader.
Yeah. And you learn more about their ways, which is to
Hmm.
prove yourself by destroying worlds and terraforming them and transforming them, right? And making
Hmm.
them into what you want conquering. So you understand more about what's happening. And I will say, though, someone in the comments was talking about the change in soundtrack or music. There's one thing that I don't care for in the Snyder Cut, and that is there's no Wonder Woman theme. There is just chanting. And when it's in the middle of battle, it's a little weird to have people like, oh, hey, hey, oh. I'm like, no. We're fighting. So the Wonder Woman theme is
Hmm.
iconic. It's one of the best superhero themes to come out of the 2000s. And I just wish that it would have been interspersed with ancient lamentation chanting. Okay,
Hmm.
that's all I it took me out of the fighting scenes sometimes. Whenever
Hmm.
Wonder Woman, looks up dramatically, I'm like, awesome, and then it's like, oh, it's not. It works when she picks up the arrow of Artemis and looks at it.
Hmm.
That works when she's thinking of her people and how she's away from Themyscira and thinking of her sisters and her mom. That works.
Hmm.
When she has about to attack stuff, it's in the middle of battle, does not work. That's when you need the Wonder Woman theme or some
Hmm.
other actiony theme song. So that's my kind of that's like my gripe about the music in the Snyder Cut.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Leo here wants us to talk about the difference of the moods of both movies and actually the soundtrack. And yeah, that's one of the things that I liked some things in the Whedon version, and I liked some other things in the Snyder version. For example, one of the things that I actually did miss was that very same thing you said about the Wonder Woman theme. I quite honestly don't remember. I think my memories are of both movies are a little bit mixed because I watched
It
them.
happens.
Yeah, but yeah, that one thing about the chanting while in battle, it does make you
Yeah.
like cringe a little bit. And well, Danny Elfman is one of my favorite musicians in soundtracks, and he did the music for the Whedon version, and I enjoyed it. It was pretty good. I mean, it's not iconic good as some of his other movies, but this one was okay. This one was pretty okay. But the selection of music, I mean, popular songs, you know, I think it's pretty accurate. It's much more accurate in the Snyder version than in the Josh Whedon version. For example, this scene where Aquaman is drinking the bottle and then throws it up in
And
the
he like
ocean.
does this and he like Titanics into the sea with his like
Yeah, and
arms out like that. Yeah.
And Josh Whedon version, we have a song by the White Stripes
Yeah.
that is very much like, yeah, I'm ready to go to battle. And in this other movie, I don't remember which song it was, but it was a completely different mood.
Yes,
It,
the
mhm,
mood is affected so much by the music. It's also
mhm,
affected by the colors. You'll notice it's more washed out in
mhm,
pardon me, in the Snyder Cut, um, which you can argue one way or the other. And then, of course, there were people complaining about the fact that it's at a different dimension. It's at a smaller dimension. It's not widescreen.
mhm.
I hardly noticed that because I was able to be immersed much more in the Snyder Cut. But I do like the chanting. But yes, but you're right, Cecilia. Though other than the chanting, the music choices were better in the Snyder
Mhm.
Cut. And
Yeah.
can I just say though, while we're talking about chanting or singing, there was one part of the Snyder Cut where I was like, maybe don't, maybe just don't. And that was when Victor, Aquaman, is leaving the Icelandic village he helps, and they're like singing about him.
Oh yeah.
And it's like reverse white savior because it's a man of color helping a village of white people, but it's still awkward. And I'm like, not here for that scene. It makes me uncomfortable. Uh, but other than that, the movie is very enjoyable and it flows. And even though I will. The overall problem with the bad guys plot is there though in both movies, which is that Darkseid is defeated on one planet out of 10,000, and he can't remember which planet it is. Really, Darkseid? You don't have like a secretary or something. So there are like major flaws that both movies have. That it's just the villain arc needed rewriting. And that's the thing is a lot of people, it has this anti-life equation and everything. So there is this possible future where Darkseid comes to Earth and the Justice League has to fight again. So the Snyder Cut sets that up much better than the Whedon Cut, but it's still overall weird. Oh yeah, and then her smelling Aquaman's sweater.
Apart from the chanting in that scene,
they could have done the exact same scene, no chanting. It could have literally just been her smelling the sweater. That would have been a great scene. It would have been funny, and it would have shown that they worship him. You don't need to go full on at church worshiping to put the point across to your audience. I think keeping the smelling of the shirt minus the Icelandic singing, perfect. That's a great scene. Like I would just edit that and change that just a little bit.
It was creepy. It was a little bit creepy.
I have another overall complaint about both movies, which is neither of them pass the Bechdel test. When women talk, they are talking about men, and a lot of their plot is focused around men. I get that Lois Lane is grieving. Girl, I got you. So sorry about your man. But she's mostly grieving Lois like the whole both times. We don't really get any other like setting for her character. But I did like the Wonder Woman was such a badass in this movie though. Because there have been I liked Wonder Woman, but in Wonder Woman 1984, she does some big battles, but it's a lot of defensive fighting. And we really get her. I mean, she's going after parademons and like aliens and stuff. So she's got to let the inner Amazon out fully. So we really get to see her in all of her glory, which is always great.
Yeah. I do want to point out though that in both movies, but especially in the Whedon version, Gal Gadot, my girl, she's so beautiful, but I don't like her that much as an actress. I must say that she's a wonderful Wonder Woman. She looks awesome, and she's very good at the action scenes, and you believe it. But once you have to focus on the emotion,
I feel like comes off as trying too hard, Cecilia. There's one scene where the girl goes, "Can I be anything I could be accused someday?" And she's like, "You can be anything you want to be." And she's like, "Feminist wink." Just like, maybe a bit much. I get what you're going. Like, she's a woman amongst men doing a man's quote unquote man's job. It sells itself. You don't need to overdo it. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I liked about the first Wonder Woman movie that I didn't like as much in Wonder Woman 1984, which is where she by herself and what she does is feminist. Really don't need to push that, because then you're going to have people complaining that they're like overselling the girl too, you know. But hey, in the comics, Wonder Woman almost defeats Superman one time. She's a very, very strong character. So
yeah, and well, in these movies and both movies, now that we're talking about Superman, well, Superman is pretty much he is literally out of this world, but but what I mean is that he is in a whole other level compared to the other superheroes. They really sell it that way.
Yeah,
and that as far as
they have to bring him back to life. The whole reason and that's why I liked about the Snyder Cut. The Joss Cut didn't really hammer this home. The whole reason the boxes woke up was because Superman died, and the boxes are like, "This Earth is undefended. Let's go, invasion time." So in the Joss Cut, it was like, these mother boxes woke up. Yay! The world is ending. Let's do something about it. There's not this connection with Batman versus Superman, which is why one of the many reasons that Snyder wanted his own version, because he did Man of Steel, he did Batman versus Superman, and then he wanted to connect that with Justice League. He wanted a tight trilogy, and Joss came in and was like, "How about no?" And like. The death of Superman is, spoiler alert, the end of Batman versus Superman. That is the main dramatic ending, is that he does die. And so it's the Snyder Cut pulls it together because Snyder had a point A to point B trilogy, vision, and
Mhm.
Joss came in at the last one, and it was actually doomed to fail, in my opinion, because you can't go over halfway into an artist's vision and finish it out. It's tough.
Mhm.
It's not
Mhm.
impossible.
Yeah, and it gives you a very different perspective regarding Superman in both movies. All because of the decisions that Whedon took, those those whole bunch of reshoots,
Yeah.
and you don't really understand why he's so angry if you don't watch the other movies. But until you watch the Snyder Cut, you get it. You know why, and you don't really need to watch the other movies.
Yeah, I think the Snyder Cut allows more room for background story that
Hmm.
viewers coming in with hardly any pre-knowledge at all can enjoy more. And
Hmm.
I also think that Snyder understands a lot of these characters better, especially Cyborg. We saw a
Hmm.
lot more of Cyborg, and we saw how Cyborg and the Flash, who saves the whole day by going back in time, which is not at all in the Joss cut, which is this idea of not only how much more powerful Cyborg is, but also how, just as like in Man of Steel, there's this line from Clark Kent, Superman's adopted dad, and he says, uh, he kind of talks about how you're going to make people question what it means to be human.
Hmm.
Cyborg does that too, and you see it in the Snyder Cut.
Yeah.
Is he really human because was born human? Is he now something more? Is he now extra human? Is he a meta human?
Hmm.
Which would be a DC term, which is what the Flash is. So the Cyborg, his character alone sets up all of these questions that I just think that Joss didn't have time or was not willing to pose with his
Hmm.
character that he was willing to pose with Superman.
I think he was more rushed into actually finishing the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the whole point, where that's the whole reason why he oversimplified the villains.
Hmm.
Well, in Zack Snyder Cut, you actually see a glimpse of how destructive Superman's power is, and we also have another huge villain in the Snyder Cut that we haven't discussed, but they just mentioned in the
What?
the
Lois
real
Lane.
villain of the movie is Lois Lane when she put on a shirt
Right?
on
Like,
Superman.
he doesn't need a shirt. Just, it's fine. He doesn't get cold or hot. Come on. Like, he's
Yeah,
got,
this is actually a tweet. This is actually a tweet from a friend of mine, Don Antonio Badia. He tweeted that, and it was people got
actually,
crazy.
thanks Leonardo though for bringing up
Mhm.
Lois Lane, because you get what Lois Lane is the key means in this movie. And
Mhm.
in the Joss cut, you're like, Lois Lane's the key, and you're like, why? Just because they're dating? Like, you don't really get what that means. You don't get, oh no, the world ends because in this we see this alternate universe with Batman, he's all
Mhm.
dusty and they're all survivalist. It's like Mad Max, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And so you've got
Just
that
Juarez in
happened.
March.
That happened because Lois Lane died and Superman was like, I don't have anything to live for anymore. I'm going to be a fascist now.
Mhm.
So that's basically why Lois Lane is the key. And you see that one scene, Cecilia, where Batman, Bruce Wayne wakes up and he's like, I just had this vision about Lois being the key. That was Barry Allen running back in time, the Flash running back in time to warn him that we see in Batman versus Superman. You literally see Barry like, Lois is the key. Oh no, am I too early? And then he like goes back into the Speed Force. So he warns Batman. It's all sorts of timey-wimey stuff. If you're a
Mhm.
Doctor Who fan, you know what I'm talking about with the
Oh, of
timey-wimey
course,
stuff.
of course, of course.
So that Barry's that was set up in Batman versus Superman.
Mhm.
So if you don't get the payoff in Justice League, it's not a complete trilogy. Snyder does that, Joss doesn't, and this is not like all just comparing the two. But if you put a turd on a plate and ask me to eat it, and you put a Pop-Tart on a plate and ask me to eat it, I'm going to eat the Pop-Tart. So I'm going to pick the Snyder Cut over the Joss cuts any day because, first of all, it's 2 more hours of DC stuff. And second of all, I think it's very obviously completing the vision that was set up in Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman.
Right, right. And well, to be honest, well, the story is better told in Snyder's Cut. And
Yeah.
it's not only because you have 2 more hours of backstory and understanding the motivation of the villain and actually finding some logic in every step of the way that the heroes take, but also, well, many people complained about the 4 hour long, but you come on, in the age of series, you watched 6 episodes of 1 hour. And
I tweeted
this
about
last
that and I
week.
was like, I'm a Bollywood movie fan. This is what I've been training for. I'm used to movies with like that are 4 hours long. I'm here for it. Patty has a really great point in the comments, talking about Bruce and Diana's so Batman and Wonder Woman, their dynamic is totally different. Totally different in the Snyder version. And the Joss Whedon version, it's like, oh, we're getting too old for this, and they, it's and there's
And the
this
flirting
weird, the flirting, and there's this weird also power dynamic. Like, oh, is Batman going to put this team together and quit, and then is Diana in charge? Not at all there in the Snyder Cut. It's really about, look, they're the original three, right? Batman, Superman when he's alive, and Diana, right? Wonder Woman. And they're a team, and you really get that in the Snyder, and there isn't this kind of question about this crisis of leadership that I think is very, it's manufactured by Joss, and it's not there. And it's like, why is this happening? This is dumb. They're trying to save the world. They would not be having these petty things back and forth. Like, that's the thing, is I'm used to animated Justice League where they have a watchtower in space, and they've been at this for years, and I get this is supposed to be the beginning of the Justice League, but even then they all are fighting toward a common goal. I liked Batman in the Snyder Cut, and it's not because I dislike one person is Batman or the other. I'm just talking about his character as presented. It made sense why he was doing what he was doing, and he looked very brave and gallant doing it.
Yeah.
In the Snyder Cut. And then in the Joss Cut, Batman is like kind of a dick.
Yeah, I gotta say
like
something
Bruce
about
Wayne
Batman.
hot, that's cool, dick. It's Bruce Wayne. That's actually really counterproductive, dick.
Okay, now that you pointed out Batman, before we move on to what I have to say about Batman, I have to thank Fofo for
Gracias,
the super
Fofo.
sticker. The super sticker.
Fofo.
Thank you so much. He's a regular here.
Fofo is awesome.
Yeah, Fofo has been a guest here so many times. He's actually part of the team. So
I'm on hashtag Team Fofo. Fofo is awesome.
Fofo is awesome. I agree. Okay, so I was going to say about Batman is that, well, I actually talk about this on my 4th episode of this podcast. I believe it was about Batman in the movies, all the Batmans in movies and
so any iteration of Batman.
Yes.
Did you talk about the animated series, or was it only live action?
Yeah, we did.
Awesome.
But at that time I didn't have. I hadn't watched the movies with Ben Affleck, and I must say that when they announced the casting of Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne, I was pretty skeptical. I was not happy because he's a consummated actor, and I didn't see him in the job. I didn't see him in the role. It was kind of like, I don't see this Bostonian guy stepping into fucking Bruce Wayne, But once I saw him, and even in the Josh Whedon's version, that is not so flashy and so brilliant. But once I saw him in the Snyder Cut, I was like, yeah, he really is a good Batman, and it's mostly because of the writing of the character, like you said. because in this version, Zack Snyder's version, he is an old Batman, a tired old Batman.
Yes. And that
That
is the one that builds the Justice League. Like that's the thing is he is
yes,
so independent
hmm
for the vast majority of his career as the Batman. And so for Bruce Wayne to start a team, he has to be literally so freaking done with the world and like, I need help and I want to help, but I can't do this alone. And that takes a Batman who's been doing this for 20 years. It
hmm
doesn't take a Batman who is fresh out of the Batcave, you know?
yeah. And one of the things that I love about this Batman is that you understand that he knows he's vulnerable, and that he is pretty much powerless compared to the other superheroes. But
Yeah.
he's the one that, well, first of all, he's the one with the money, so he's the one that is sponsoring them with cool gadgets. But on the other hand, he's the one that put them together. He's providing the leadership, um, the logistical
Yeah.
leadership that they need, because the moral leader of the group is, well, it's Superman.
And that's the thing is though, but to the what I liked about the Justice League animated and what they do, what Joss does, especially that last scene where Martian Manhunter comes and is like, all right, I guess I'm joining. He goes to Bruce Wayne. He doesn't go to Clark Kent.
Mhm.
So he is the face of the Justice League. And a lot of the reason is you want humans to trust you. Have the Justice League headed by a human, not by
Yeah.
an alien, not by
Or a
a
god.
human or
Yeah.
a god. So it
Mhm.
needs to be Batman. And that is why the Justice League works as a super society,
Mhm.
because the people are not, even though they revere Superman, he is a god to them. They need someone who literally, roughing up the streets of Gotham. He's punching, he has, batarangs and such, but he doesn't have this invulnerability and he has an expiration date. Superman, as long as he doesn't die, I mean, it seems like he's probably gonna, he may not live.
This is so true. Patty says, well, in an earlier comment, Patty was saying that Keaton was the best Batman and Affleck was is the best Bruce. And then later she said, and the better Bruce Batman combo is Lego Batman. And she is completely right.
And also, there's a show on HBO called Titans, which is
Mhm.
modeled after the Teen Titans. Once again, that's DC. That's the B-level DC team. So that's going to be like Robin, and then Cyborg actually was
Cyborg,
part of
yeah.
the Titans. Yeah, but then he was also a part of the Justice League, which is why they were able to use him in this movie.
Mhm.
But there is, I like that the Cyborg, and this is not the Teen Titans goofy Cyborg who's like, booyah, which I still appreciate. But he's also a very traumatized and hurt person. And I really appreciated that. And I think that I really don't care for Batman. It's Wonder Woman and The Flash for me. Superman, mostly just Supergirl. And I like
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. Batman, it takes a lot to convince me to just mostly because he is in the end a rich guy, and I have a hard time being like, oh yeah, like he does have a tragic backstory, but I feel like he has a tragic backstory so over, like, kind of feel bad for a rich guy because otherwise it's hard to.
Yeah. I
Like,
wonder why.
I love the one-liners he has, right? Like the "What's your superpower? I'm rich," and then, "Oh, what did you do about the house? What the bank? Oh, I bought the bank." Like these kinds
Mhm.
of. I think Ben Affleck
Yeah.
really sells that line, and I like Ben Affleck as Batman. I
Mhm.
know I'm that's not necessarily how everyone else feels, but I
Yeah.
like a Batman who and I also, growing up, I liked Batman Beyond, which was about the successor of Batman. And so it was
Mhm.
about an old Bruce Wayne teaching a new Batman. And I love that dynamic.
Mhm.
And oh, yeah. So in HBO, Titans is a show there. And they have a version of old Batman who was teaching a 20-something Robin. And if you're a Game of Thrones fan, you should check it out because the guy who plays Batman was in Game of Thrones, and I won't tell you who it is. You've got to check it out. But season 2, you find out who it is, and it is awesome.
Mhm. So yeah, and well, now that we are going in that direction, in the comments they are mentioning the Joker.
Yeah. I liked it better the second time. I'll put it that way. When I
Yeah.
rewatched it and I thought a little bit more about the whole alternate universe and alternate timeline stuff, then I appreciated it a lot more. But the first time I saw it, other than the dialogue, which I thought was well written, I didn't like the concept.
Hmm.
But I will say the dialogue between Batman and the Joker in that epilogue is fire. It
Yeah.
is, I literally, and the acting, but I want to hold it up and be like, here is how you act a well written scene. You're welcome.
Hmm.
The dynamics between this theme of someone dying in your arms and the way that the Joker and Batman play off of each other, I think is really, really well done.
Hmm.
And you notice that Mira is there, and there's kind of a hint that Aquaman isn't. We know Wonder Woman is supposed to be dead. So this is a really beaten Justice League. And this
Hmm.
is an alternate timeline that there are two interpretations. You can take it as they defeated Steppenwolf, this alternate timeline doesn't matter, but I don't think that's necessarily what Snyder is doing here. It looks like Darkseid is what could bring that timeline. Because at the end of the Snyder cut, he's like, Steppenwolf failed. All right, we're doing it the old way. Darkseid's, packing up his bag and he's going to Earth. So then that timeline could still happen. He could still turn
Bad.
Superman
Hmm.
bad. So I prefer that interpretation, which is that
Hmm.
hey, if you wanted to make another movie, a second Justice League movie, like, you could do that. Not to mention Martian Manhunter coming in at the end. That makes it a complete 7, which was the original 7. So
Hmm.
sometimes you have Hawkgirl, yeah. And Green. We don't have Hawkgirl or Green Lantern, but we do have Martian Manhunter in the original.
Hmm. Hmm.
So he is probably one of the more powerful beings. And if we did get a Justice League, those of you who are watching Supergirl on the CW, we get a version of Martian Manhunter there. Also, thankfully, he transforms into a man of color. Very nice to see that. But he's one of the more powerful beings. He could actually give Superman a run for his money. So that would be great to see them on screen.
Hmm. Hmm. And now they are mentioning the Injustice games, which is part of the differences in both movies. Um,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, I think they are. I would I would not mind a movie that worked more on alternate timelines.
Mhm.
The Flash does that naturally with his running. If you watch the Flash, the CW show or the comics, there's always some stuff going on with alternate timelines because of the Flash using his powers, which is why he doesn't use it often, which
Mhm.
is why Barry Allen in the movie portrayed as Ezra Klein is saying, okay, you got to break this rule, Barry. No, you don't want to break the rule, but you got to break the rule. And you're thinking, oh, maybe he's uptight. Like literally, he can rewrite history if he's not careful. So
Mhm.
by saving them, there was an alternate timeline created because he
Mhm.
saved them.
Mhm.
So our world goes on, quote unquote, as normally, except Darkseid's on his way, whereas another world has been taken over already.
Mhm.
But our world is still in danger because Darkseid could come and do what Steppenwolf has it. So I
Mhm.
really appreciate that, and I think they could definitely run with that more, especially this idea of the Joker and the Batman reluctantly working together because there is no us and them anymore.
Mhm.
Globally, because there is an us versus them, literally Darkseid and the aliens are taking over. So we as humans have to work together.
Mhm.
People of Earth, because I don't want to
Yeah.
exclude any awesome aliens that'll help us out, like Martian Manhunter, who has a very tragic backstory, by the way. If you are interested in learning more about John Jones, I suggest that because there's a whole genocide on Mars and everything. It's very sad.
I don't really know much about that one particular
Basically, he's
character.
like one of the last of his people, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Because there was a different race, the white Martians that had taken over in Mars, and the green Martians are almost all dead, or pretty much dead, and he escapes. But yeah, anyway, and he had a family, and it was
Kind of
very,
like
very
the
sad.
Doctor.
Yeah, and he had a family, and they were all killed. It was very, very sad. But the Martian Manhunter is an
Mhm.
extremely awesome character, and I would love to see him because we do get him in Supergirl, like I said, in that CW show.
Mhm.
But we, of course, get it in the animated Justice League. But there's a lot more you can do with Martian Manhunter. I'm sorry, Patty put Martha Manhunter because he. So here's the thing about Martian Manhunter. I like the scene where you see him where he's going to join the Justice League. I don't care for the scene where he morphed into Superman's mom and then unmorphs. So in the Joss cut, that's just them. They just have that conversation. right? And in this case, oh, it's not a nice moment between Martha and Lois because they're both grieving women. Instead, it's, the Martian Manhunter giving her a pep talk. Did not feel that too much. Did not feel that too much. I will say.
Mhm.
I was like, Snyder, maybe just leave the very last scene in it, the last scene of Martian Manhunter being there. I actually think that would have been more fun and climactic because it was the very end of the movie than
Mhm.
to kind of tease us with it in the middle. I think it was much more impactful with just one Martian Manhunter scene at the very end.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I don't really have that much knowledge about that particular character, like I said. But well, I understood. What I understood is that there were plans to develop beyond, right? And that's the reason why you see some other characters by the end of the movie that we don't watched at all in the canon version. So I really don't like missing that part because, well, I'm not very much of a fan of DC or comics in general. But once you watch things like that and you don't really know what's going on, it makes you wonder. That's when you
Yeah.
start wondering. Yeah. And
Yeah, well, with the Martian Manhunter, what I like about him, Jean Jones, which is the most hilarious, like, made up alien name because it's John Jones. Anyway, the thing that's interesting about him is that he is like Superman in that he was living pretending to be human for a while.
mhm,
And I like that because it's like really only Superman of all, if in the DC verse, if there's all these other aliens, really there's no other alien that came to Earth to seek refuge, and then you get the Martian Manhunter and you're like, okay, cool. But the DC universe with just Superman, that only he's doing that, it makes it not as, the world building isn't as good, because if there really is this very robust catalog of alien civilizations, we should have seen more contact, even if it was low level.
mhm, mhm. Well, to be honest, all the other godlike figures or the godlike characters like Aquaman or Wonder Woman, they do feel out of this world because
Yeah,
of their powers.
definitely.
And while even Cyborg with his backstory, he feels human even though he's a cyborg.
He's been integrated with alien technology. In this
Yeah.
version, it's the mother box, right? So
Mhm.
he's a human who is being kept alive by alien technology. I mean, you can look at it that way. Obviously, he's also got the arm cannons and he's got thrusters, like he's awesome, but also he's basically a human who would be dead without alien technology. And I
Mhm.
think that's quite interesting, and Snyder really leans into that.
And I like the way they integrated the daddy issues and
Yes,
in
the
the
daddy
Snyder Cut. Yeah,
issues.
well, the daddy issues are present in both versions,
Yes.
but you have a
I
little bit
actually care
more.
about their dynamic and
Yeah.
relationship in this one, because and the way that he sacrifices himself, and that means something, and it means something
Yes.
for the overall plot of defeating Steppenwolf. That is
Hmm.
how you storytell. That's how you build superhero arcs, is that each person does their own part, and if
Hmm.
they wouldn't have done that, you could not have defeated the bad guy, because then
Yeah.
otherwise why are each of these heroes there? Which is why I love that the Flash got a
Hmm.
whole other reason to run. That's all he, like, not to simplify, he runs, that's his thing. So
Hmm.
him running needs to help everyone. It literally saved the earth in this movie.
Hmm. Hmm.
So how can you get more important than that? And everyone had their role in defeating Steppenwolf. You had Cyborg, he needed to connect with the mother boxes, right? And while he's doing that, someone's got to fight off Steppenwolf. So that's where and the parademons. So that's where you get Batman, Superman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, right? They're the muscle.
Hmm.
They're going to get there, and they're going to make sure that the people who have these needed abilities, such as the Flash running and giving the charge, and of course Cyborg hacking, they're protected. Like, this is what the Justice League is supposed to be. It's supposed to be these amazing, beings putting their talents together in a way that is most advantageous to saving the Earth. And that is why,
Yeah.
even though the mother boxes and Steppenwolf and Darkseid, like, even in the Snyder Cut, it is a little bit muddled. It's still, you can follow, why each character is doing what they're doing. And also, there are not stupid scenes Like, I'm just gonna go off for like 1 second, Cecilia. I promise it's gonna be like real quick. The scene in the Joss cut where I call it the whipping it out and measuring it scene, where you have the Flash running with a car, saving a family. This is not in the Snyder cut. And then you have Superman. Oh, I have a whole building. I'm flying by. Oh, haha. You can only save 4 people. I can save 400. No one gives a crap. You're saving people. This is petty for the Justice League. So to have the Snyder cut take out bullshit like that, thank you. Because the Joss cut like has so much stupid toxic masculinity parts where it's like, hoo, I'm stronger than you. Like, no, they would just be getting down to business saving people. That is what the Justice League is about. And I feel like Joss didn't understand what the Justice League is about. If you want funny, silly, awkward team, right? I mean, Marvel has that. You can do Guardians of the Galaxy. That's not what the Justice League is. It's not Guardians of the Galaxy, Joss. Don't try to make it.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned that, one of the things that I loved about this scene is that once Superman appears, you completely forget that Batman is there, and that's kind of the point. Once the whole thing is solved after the Flash traveled back in time, then you know what happened to Batman, and that kind of tells you the importance of the role that Batman has in this group. Like I mentioned before, he knows that he's the vulnerable one in the group because he doesn't have superpowers. He just has money, but he's resourceful, and he manages to keep the flying things, insects or whatever the parademons. The parademons far away.
That's with the Justice League, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah.
So obsessed. Yeah, and also
he's like the shadow of the group, like the protective shadow of the group.
Also, talking about something that I like is also the place meant more. The fact that he was in this like abandoned, it was essentially a Chernobyl-like place, right?
Yeah.
And that he was using the toxicity of the air. There are these tiny little things that Snyder has that makes it, more obvious that they have done this before, as in Steppenwolf. The Justice League has not done this before. They've all been fighting separately. They have their own movies and all that. But to come together, that's something that's new. And that's why, they're a little rusty at first. But in the end, they are able to, bring their powers together. And it's important. And each part is kind of thematically important. And even small things like Steppenwolf, he got that glow up. He's got this like amazing armor in the Snyder Cut. I like that a lot more because that's more representative of what Darkseid represents. His inner circle, the people that go out and conquer, they do have this ostentatious nature about them with the jewels and the flashy weapons, and it's about kind of being recognized as this warlord. So it's the details that I think that Snyder and his daughter did commit suicide, and so he took a step back from the movie. But it was not because he didn't love the material or love the art. It was because he had a personal tragedy going on, and I like that he got the time to do it because it's very obvious that where he was. Because I basically rewatched everything. I did Man of Steel, and I did Batman vs. Superman, and then I watched the Snyder Cut again. So I've spent some hours on this, and it's much more continuity and much more thematic kind of drive when you have that. And I will say also, though, I like the version of Barry Allen that Ezra is going for. Barry Allen totally works as an awkward Jewish boy so well. And I think that his little mannerisms, like that one scene that's in both movies, and it should be, when he's running and he sees that Superman can tap into the Speed Force, is so fast that he can move within the Speed Force. Like,
no,
that is gold. And that's what I'm saying is like, you can have those comedic moments in DC movies. Of course you can. But that's not what all the movies are about. The Flash is about what? when he was running back in time, what was he talking about? He was saying, Dad, I hope you're proud of, basically, I want you
Mhm.
to know that I was one of the best, right?
Mhm.
If he dies, he just wants his dad to be proud. And
Yeah.
that's the human moments
Mhm.
that Snyder gives us make the Justice League more worth it and
Yeah.
human.
And speaking about that, and I think that this comment is pretty on point to what you're saying. It says, "I love the differences with Marvel. In Avengers, everyone knows the heroes who save them. In the Justice League, almost no one noticed the danger in which the world was. They just
They
saved it.
just do their job.
They just do their job,
Exactly.
which is
Yeah.
pretty much, well, it is inevitable. For example, the Superman is famous because of is worldwide famous. The
Because
the
he's
whole
freaking Superman.
because he's freaking Superman, and the whole world was basically mourning after his death. And no one, and I love that no one actually cares about Batman. No one even knows about Wonder Woman. Uh,
Yeah, she
this,
keeps it on the DL.
yeah,
Yeah.
this Icelandic women, of course, worship and chant
Yeah.
to the Aquaman, but they don't really know who he is. They just know that he provides
Same thing
for
with the
them.
Flash. He's there
Uh-huh.
in and out so quickly. No one even knows who he is. Like
Hmm.
we get that scene with the young lady that he saves from the car,
Hmm.
and gets a little hot dog. I love that because that's the thing about Flash is that he's burning so many calories. He's a little snack monster. I love it. And so he has that classic campiness of the Flash because the Flash comics, Central City is very different from Gotham or Metropolis. It's a
Hmm.
smaller city, not that much crime, and the Flash is like kind of the feel of Central City and the Flash very different from the others. And they kind of showed that with Barry Allen. But you notice he saves that girl and she's really pretty, and it could be Iris West for those of you who do the Flash, his love interest. I don't know if that's supposed to be Iris West. But he kind of sets her down and he's like, okay, bye, right? Like he dashes off. So there is this kind of anonymity around a lot of the people in the Justice League that I think the Avengers, it's definitely a different feel. DC and Marvel take a different approach when it comes to their superhero teams as
Hmm.
far as how they want to present them. And I think that Snyder does, in a lot of ways, understand the original dynamics of the Justice League.
Hmm.
And we do have Captain America is strong. He's not Superman strong. So
No.
we also have one person very obviously standing out amongst the others, and that's how Justice League is different from the Avengers. We definitely look, Captain America is invulnerable. He has been altered, right? He's very strong. I'm not saying, but he's not from another planet.
Hmm.
Strong.
Yeah.
Literally, your sun gives me superpowers. I could just heat vision the whole planet to blow up. Strong.
Hmm.
And so that's why you notice when we have the part where they're trying to restrain Superman and Batman is like, get back, the cops just kind of let it happen. The thing about the Justice League too is that they also have to be a kind of self-disciplining body. If
Hmm.
one of them goes rogue, it's the other's job to deal with it. And that's the same thing with the Avengers, but it plays out a little differently in
Yeah.
DC with Superman here. And there are a lot of questions that obviously Snyder's trying to ask with Superman. This is something I was talking about with Patrick Spinagle on Twitter, a good friend of ours. He was talking about how he's not quite sure if Snyder quite understands the character of Superman as well as he could. And I do agree with that. If we learn one thing from the Snyder Cut, it's that he knows a lot about Cyborg and Batman. I will say he understands their characters for sure.
Hmm.
And I will say there are parts where Superman can be more nuanced, and I think, and he's only there for half a movie, so I get half of the movie, so I do get that as well. But just watching Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, and this isn't really, and I like Henry Cavill as well as Superman. I think it's a great casting. Think
Yeah.
it's good acting. The writing I think can suffer here and there. Um, yeah,
Yeah. But speaking of Superman as a character in his role in the Justice League, uh, well, he is powerful enough to do things on his own, but the I believe that the reason that it works for him to be in the Justice League, for him to need some help, I think it's a part connected to his quote unquote human side,
Hmm.
to his human personality. He actually needs someone to rely on because
Yeah.
of his human side.
And I
It's not.
also think that with Superman gone, Batman is also working through within a power vacuum. And he's also, if you've seen Batman versus Superman, Batman is building this team out of guilt.
Mhm,
He realizes that everyone put everything on Superman when we should have been building a team. We should
mhm,
not have been expecting this super person to save us every single time. We need to give him some backup.
mhm,
And that's a lot of what the Justice League is born out in the Snyderverse.
mhm,
The Justice League is born out of tragedy, out of the loss of Superman. And that should be central to a lot of the plot of the movie. And I think that Snyder does make that the central part, kind of part of it.
yeah. Well, and I think it's an important message, right? That you can be as powerful as you can, but if you work alone, maybe there will be consequences. And well, the consequence was that you died.
Yeah. And you did understand too in the end, Cecilia, since you said you've only seen this movie,
Mhm,
there is a scene in the epilogue. So we
mhm,
have the alternate timeline.
mhm,
We also have this guy with a mask who comes to talk to Lex Luthor. Did
mhm.
you understand that scene?
I didn't. So
This
if
man
you,
is named Slade Wilson. He is
uh-huh,
also known as Deathstroke. He is a very talented assassin who has
mhm.
a vendetta against
Batman.
Batman.
Hmm.
And in Teen Titans, he has a vendetta against Robin. So we know that there's a hint at Robin in the alternate timeline because the Joker says you sent a boy wonder, Robin, to do a man's job,
Hmm.
Batman.
Hmm.
So that was really interesting. So they're hinting at some Robin, which I'm so here for because I'm super into it. And if you see Titans on HBO, the guy who plays Robin is a smoke show. So check it out just for that alone. Anyway,
Who would you
but so
cast
we
as
have
Robin?
the guy that plays Robin in Titans is literally who I'd cast as Robin. He is hot. He cannot act his way out of a paper bag, but he is so good looking. Okay, anyway, so my point about Deathstroke. So he's an assassin. He is coming to talk to Lex Luthor. So we have now, this is a setup for maybe a future Batman movie,
Mhm.
is that Deathstroke is going to go after Batman. Now, he is very, very talented man. All forms of martial arts, all forms of weaponry, including swords, and including
Oh, we
swords
know, we
that we
know, we
know about.
know. Yeah, we know.
I'm thirsting after so many people in this movie. But Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke, swords,
Mhm.
guns, knives, very, very great martial artist, very smart, very intelligent. He is gonna be formidable opponent to Batman.
He's like
And
the
Lex
Black Widow
Luthor,
of.
and in the Snyderverse, one of my slight disagreements is that Metropolis is right next to Gotham, and that's not the case in the comics. And it's just a little weird to have these two huge cities next to each other. It's not super common, but it's like New York City isn't right next to LA. This is really weird. Seattle
Mhm.
isn't next to Chicago.
Mhm.
Okay, fine. But because you have that though, you could look at it as kind of an Oakland versus San Francisco thing, where Gotham is Oakland and then Metropolis would be San Francisco, where there's this idea of kind of a certain part of this area being left to the wayside, like Gotham is, right? Left to poverty, left to crime, left to destitution, and so you do
Mhm.
have that different feel of Batman is the hero for Gotham, and then Superman is the
I'm
hero for
gonna say
Metropolis.
Juarez and El Paso.
What is
Juarez being Gotham City and El Paso being Metropoli, but actually Juarez is much bigger than El Paso. But anyway,
El Paso is a nice town. I went there for a conference,
I
so
love El Paso.
so support your Texas border towns.
I love El Paso. I
I love
feel
El
it.
Paso too. I had a great time there. And they
I
still have
feel like
these
my
old
hometown.
cable cars. They have these
Mhm.
old like cable car. They've kept everything kind of
Mhm.
preserved. Anyway, check out El Paso. It's a charming town. Go
It
meet
is.
Beto O'Rourke. Was it
Oh
still salty
yeah,
about the fact that we did not get Robin movie with Joseph
yeah.
Gordon-Levitt?
I
Yeah,
know.
Patty, I'm here for that. Joseph Gordon-Levitt is an amazing Robin.
Mhm.
He gets the mannerisms of whether you're doing the Dick Grayson version of there are about 3 different Robins over the comics, but he's great for any iteration of them. And he's got that cute American boy look that I really think about with Robin.
Mm-hmm.
And Joseph Gordon-Levitt just acts circles around most people, so that's also very helpful.
Yeah.
Um,
Actually,
yeah, so
if they hadn't cast Ezra Miller as the Flash, he would have worked as a Robin too.
I think so. Absolutely. He would have worked as a Boy Wonder, like, hands down. But so that's the part of the epilogue. So there is that Joker alternate universe. But yeah, for those of you that are not into the comics, Slade Wilson, aka Deathstroke, he's a thing. I think he's a great villain. And he's also got a big part in Teen Titans, if you're ever a fan of Teen Titans. So that's always fun. He's usually the big bad. I was gonna say, so we talked about most characters. Are there any? I've made my feelings clear about Lois Lane too. I think Amy Adams is amazing. This is my favorite iteration of Lois Lane. I think that obviously she's in my top favorite Amy's, and I have a list of Amy's because Amy is the best name ever. But Amy Adams, at first when I saw it, I was like, I do kind of have the dark-haired Lois in my head, but once I saw Amy Adams, it's like, okay, she's Lois. She really embodies the intrepid reporter, and especially in Man of Steel, I really, really liked Amy Adams as Lois Lane, and she is the key in this movie, right? Which is why I wish we would have got a little bit more of her. But
and she is also arguably the best actress in the cast.
Yeah, I think she's really, really good.
And not that I previously mentioned about Gal Gadot not being a very good actress. I think it has to do a lot with the director. If the director doesn't...
Yeah, and it's not like she's terrible. It's just that there's some really talented people in this movie. And I will say, Alfred's lines give me life.
Oh my goodness! Don't get me started on...
Every time Alfred opens his mouth, I'm like, oh my god! And the way that he is like fiddling with the tea when Diana tries to make it, so British. I love it so much.
I love it. And I love the micromanagement right there.
Yes.
And well, for starters, it's Jeremy Irons.
You're gonna love it.
Irons.
You're gonna love it no matter what. But his constant, because this is Alfred after 20 years of seeing Bruce Wayne be his own worst enemy. So he's also a little bit pessimistic and like sarcastic to the point where I'm like, thank you.
He's nihilistic. Yeah, he's nihilistic.
Yeah. But I just love, my favorite one is where he goes, guess I'll put on the tea. Not sure where we'll find the cups. You have no friends, Bruce. What's wrong with you, Bruce? Why are you so socially inept, Bruce?
Yeah, I gotta say that some of the lines that are in the official version, I like them. I kind of miss them in this older version because he's constantly like pushing Batman's buttons regarding Wonder Woman, and also I don't know.
Yeah, he's obsessed with like Batman's ability to reproduce. He's like, and so ends the House of Wayne. Like, you might wanna. You gonna get with anyone? No companionship. You're gonna die alone in the Batcave. All right,
okay.
Alfred. Yeah. And
I
I love the comment too by Bruce Wayne. He's like, "This is Alfred. I work for him." I love that so much.
Pretty much that way. It is pretty much that way.
Well, and that's the thing is that as much as one can be really excited about Batman, he has to have Alfred to be holding down the base. We all need that, which is why, in the Arrowverse, if you watch Arrow on the CW, you have Felicity, who's the nerd, computer geek, who's like telling him where to go and do what. Alfred, you need Alfred in your group, right?
You can have the Batman without Alfred.
Absolutely.
No, he's the genius behind the hero, basically. Because, well, yeah, Batman is the one that can fight, and but he's the brain of the operations.
And he's also, I think, someone who makes you realize that Bruce Wayne is more than just a spoiled rich kid, because he did grow up with, Alfred saw Bruce grow up and understands the hurt and the trauma that he's carrying with him into the battlefield. So.
Yeah. And in that in that point, I think that he made, well, if we had seen more movies in the Snyderverse, well, I that would have been a pretty good point to connect with Cyborg for Bruce. Like have a connection, an emotional connection with Cyborg
Yeah.
because of the death
I
of their parents.
Yes, I had
Mhm.
wished that they would have. That would be like if I could make a movie after this, my ideal Justice League 2 movie, right? It would be Cyborg and Batman kind of relate to each other because of being, first of all, being human. Cyborg technically was born human. They're the only ones, those two in the group. I mean, I guess Barry Allen as well. But Barry Allen's connection with the Speed Force makes him not relate to humans the same way we would because he's literally living life at a speed that we cannot.
Mhm.
He's literally he's like not putting himself into the Speed Force and on our level, right? So you have Cyborg and Batman. It would be great for them to be working together. And for Batman, he's running this base of operations. We see him opening this, right? That great line by Wonder Woman that says, "But room for more," right? When he says, "A big table right there with 6 chairs," and she says, "But room for more," right?
Mhm.
So we
Mhm.
have the Hall of Justice. Yeah, bow, 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 bow. That's my air horn. We have the Hall of Justice. So Justice League 2, the Aemy Blackfyre version, you would have those sweet, sweet statues outside the Hall of Justice that show the original Justice League members with Martian Manhunter at it because he should have been in this movie more anyway. And, just like that's where Batman is working, Cyborg is helping him out, and they are doing the version, basically a version of Justice League Unlimited, which we see, which is was the kind of sequel to Justice League the animated series, where they're bringing in other heroes, like B-level heroes, like Green Arrow.
Hashtag release the Black Fireverse.
I'm making my own movie, everyone. I have no budget or qualifications, but that's what I'm doing. No, but I am obsessed with story writing, and I study Chinese literature. Storytelling and world building is my bread and butter, and so that's why I am critical of a lot of action movies, is because usually the storytelling goes to the wayside, and Zack Snyder is not with this movie. That's not what he's doing. He is putting storytelling at the center, and that is the heart of any comic book movie or adaptation, is that the central goal of saving the earth and of being things that relate to each other. I don't want to say humans because some of them are aliens, some of them are metahumans. Being beings that relate to each other and realize that the world is worth fighting for, even if it's not where you're from, even if you hate the world. They all come together in the end and fight together. And so, the Justice League is obviously a special place in my heart. But I think that the idea of how to build this team comes from Batman, because he realizes that he's only human, literally, and that the world needs a team. It can't do with these separate heroes in different cities.
Yeah. Well, before we continue, I want to I want to say hi to some guy with a huge bird that is
Who's
asking
this? Hear
who
me,
is this?
Dragon says he's seen The Expanse. I wonder.
I don't know. I don't know. I saw him one day. I think I saw him one day in one podcast. I can't recall which one because there are a lot of podcasts out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Hi, Steven. How you've been? I must say that I wasn't expecting you to show up here because you are very jealous of your bedtime.
Yeah, he's very diligent
Mhm.
about getting to bed. I am not, especially
Yeah.
not since quarantine.
I wish I
Um,
was like that because yeah, I would.
so I know you're a Batman fan, Cecilia, but taking out Batman, who is your favorite of the Justice League as we're presented in this movie?
I think it's Cyborg.
Cyborg. Okay,
Cyborg.
I dig it.
If I hadn't seen the Snyder Cut, I would have said Flash because
Okay,
he's hilarious.
I love the
But
Flash. Yeah,
yeah, but the Snyderverse made Cyborg pretty much the central character of the movie.
absolutely,
They
absolutely.
wouldn't have
Yeah,
done anything even if it was only Superman Batman and Wonder Woman, they wouldn't have succeeded if not for the cyborg.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think his character is also important because he
Mhm.
is he was a person of color at Gotham City University there because, I mean, obviously he had his academic prowess, but he was, aided by the scholarship by a football scholarship. So
Mhm.
he has a lot of pressures on him culturally about, being a
I
good
know.
athlete.
Mhm.
And it's a part of being an athlete. It's, a lot of it's about making sure that you hone your body so that it doesn't fail you. And then he gets
Mhm.
in this accident. It's very, very thematic, all of this. Not only that, but he gets in an accident with his mom, who he prefers over his dad because his mom is there for him, and then his
Mhm.
mom dies. So you have his connection with his dad, and his whole backstory is so human and should be the center of this movie. And that's why I
Yeah.
like that Zack Snyder doesn't shy away from just making this half man, half machine,
Yeah.
the
You
heart of it.
you don't get it in the Whedon version. You just see that it's a teenage that is angry with his dad,
Yeah.
and yeah, and it's kind of like boring, and it's kind
And
of boring.
it seems overly dramatic.
Yeah.
You're not on, you're kind of like, actually,
You think that he's
I felt for
overreacting?
his dad and him so much more in this one. I
Yes.
understand, especially, oh my God, the recording.
Mhm.
When he makes the recording whole again and
Yeah.
listens to it, and he goes, "As a father, your father, twice over." I bawled my
Mhm.
eyes out. I'm gonna be honest
Yeah.
with you right now. I cried so hard because not only is he his biological father, but then he created him as like a Frankenstein's monster thing. He's
Mhm.
Dr. Frankenstein creating this
Yes.
monster,
Mhm.
and the burden he's placed on his son out of you could say sheer selfishness to keep him in his life,
Mhm.
that is just really, really important to this question of, now that we have aliens, we have to defend the earth. Like, how far are humans willing to go to get an advantage
Mhm.
on life, on mortality, right?
Mhm. Yeah. And well, in this movie, you do understand the pain surrounding the family and why he's so angry at his dad. Both because, well, he basically ignored him his whole childhood
Yeah,
and adolescence.
yeah.
But now he turned it into something else, something that won't allow him to go freely walking on the street without
Hmm.
staring, without people staring. So you understand the drama, and you truly empathize first with Cyborg, then you empathize with the father. You
Yeah.
understand why he did it, and you actually care about both of them. So that when the father dies, it's pretty dramatic, and
And
you
his
and
sacrifice means something, and it means
mhm,
something to the team. You have that scene with Aquaman.
mhm,
Aquaman is talking to the Flash, and he says, "I don't know, this guy. We're putting a lot on him. He just lost his dad."
mhm,
And then the Flash says, "I thought you didn't care." And Aquaman said, "I didn't say that." Those
mhm,
are the character moments that the Justice League animated series and the original comics had, that Snyder honed in on. And that's the
mhm,
thing, is that with comics, obviously you have to adapt things, you have to change things, but as long as the heart of the comics are there, you're going to have a successful adaptation. And that's why I think that this really worked, is that kind of Cyborg's relationship with his father, and this kind of, and questions of parenthood are huge in comic books and in this series as well. You
mhm.
have obviously you have Superman and his parents who raised him that really weren't his parents. Um yes,
There
Aaron
is
is right.
points right that everyone
Everyone has,
has father issues in this movie except for Wonder Woman,
yes. Wonder
and
Woman is the
this
only
is
one.
because yeah
Her
she
dad's a god, so
does yeah.
whatever, you don't have to deal with that. Yeah, no,
Mhm,
it's, and that's something that's very relatable and it's very human. And I think that um the reason that I love the Justice League, first of all, they're heroes, yay, saving the day. But they also kind of ask this question about, kind of, how far is the world willing to go to trust people, who a select group of people with abilities, to have the best interests of the Earth in mind. And that's really difficult because you really are trusting people who are walking nuclear bombs to have compassion and to care about you, which is why, of course, Superman's whole raised in Kansas cares about America and people. You've got that going on. But you also have, right, the Flash. He cares about his dad and the fact that his dad was falsely accused of murdering his mom, and him knowing he was basically, for those of you that don't know about the Flash, his mother was killed by a speedster. So someone who runs fast. So, the Flash later became one. So when the Flash told the this is one version, there are many different backstories. When the Flash told the Central City Police Department, my mom was killed by a flash of lightning or a monster, right? Then they were like, oh, this kid, he's coping with the death of his mom because his dad killed his mom. He can't take it. So he's coming up with some monster killed his mom. Actually, that's what happened. So you have this extreme guilt coming from Barry Allen about trying to do the right thing. He becomes the Flash and he's trying to do the right thing. Yeah, you have Cyborg, who really, he was a part of human society and Gotham. He cared about us. And now all of a sudden, especially now that his dad is gone, it's about saving the world because your dad's death can't be in vain. The stakes are so much higher in this movie than they are in a lot of superhero movies, and of course than they are in the Justice League.
Yeah, and we haven't talked much about Aquaman either. So I feel like we need to get in.
Okay, so I rewatched Aquaman, which is supposed to happen after the events of this. So definitely watch Aquaman if you're more interested, because he does come into contact with his father in that movie. But yeah, you have, so basically Aquaman thinks that his mother came to Maine, literally washed up on Maine, and she was injured. She's an Atlantean. Victor's father saves her. They fall in love. It's a love story. They have a kid. She's living amongst the surface dwellers for a while, but then eventually Atlantean guards come, and she says, I have to return in order to keep you both safe. And his dad has this baby, right? Is the toddler kind of at that point. So he believes that Aquaman believes that his mother was executed by the Atlanteans because she left. She's a queen. She was married to the king of Atlantis. So she was exiled. She had been, she basically had self-exiled and then had a baby and come back, right? So he thinks that his mother has been executed by his own people. He has a half-brother who is younger, who is wanting to take over the throne. So you have these huge daddy issues because he is a quote-unquote half-breed, and I hate to use this as a lot of eugenics, a lot of racial purity kind of things going on here that make me very uncomfortable but are important to talk about, especially when we think about the ideas of colonialism and things that I talk about in my own scholarship.
I'm Mexican. Yeah, I know about
exactly
that.
What it's like. You know I'm going. But the point is that he... there are some people in society, including his mentor, who is that Volko, I can never remember his name. He is basically like, you must take the throne of Atlantis. And Jason Momoa is like, not about that. Just gonna kind of hang out and be cool, right? So you have Jason Momoa, right? Aquaman. They're like, you need to take the throne back from your brother and rule Atlantis so that there will be peace. You need to unite all of Atlantis, because Atlantis at this point, the Atlantean Empire kind of is broken up into kind of different places, in different factions. And so Aquaman has all of this on his plate of people wanting him to return to Atlantis and be something that he's not sure he wants to be. He grew up on the surface, and he's been taught by Volko how to swim like an Atlantean, how to do all these things, but he didn't grow up there. And so you have very much a kind of a clash of worlds going on. And I think that with Aquaman, you do also kind of have this understanding of
his brokenness.
Yeah. He's basically not fully human and not fully Atlantean. So he's very much an outcast. And for him to then be integrated into this team is quite a feat, right? Which is why when Batman goes the first time, Victor gives him the middle finger. And it's like, no thanks. I'm going to keep helping random Icelandic villages, and I'm going to call that a good life. And he's still helping people, right? We see a natural inclination by Victor to help people. So so really, if you want more Aquaman, obviously watch Aquaman. And that's when he actually spoilers, becomes fully recognized Aquaman with the suit, King of Atlantis, the whole thing. You're going to get that after the Justice League. So we see him right now as someone who is lost and someone who he wants to make a difference deep down, but he also really doesn't want to open himself up to being hurt and to being disappointed. And so the Joss cut has that one scene where he has the lasso of truth around him and he's like, sometimes I'm just vulnerable. He's the Theon Greyjoy of the Justice League.
I agree.
Thank you, Aaron. That's exactly right. So, but you do have that one scene in the Joss cut where he has the lasso of truth, Wonder Woman's lasso of truth around him, and he's being like, I don't know, sometimes I just don't want to become vulnerable. Sometimes I'm worried, and he's like, that's that was Joss's attempt at Aquaman's general aesthetic in this Snyderverse, which is, loner who wants to do the right thing but really needs a push, needs lots of pushes. He needs Batman to be pushing for him to be a part of the team. And we really don't get him joining in fully until there's the scene where they're underwater in these old abandoned tunnels. And we get him come in and be like, water, okay, fine, it's my turn. And then he water bends the water back, right? So we do have this finally, he kind of comes in, and Aquaman, especially as portrayed by Jason Momoa, has a lot of nuances and a lot of kind of interesting issues going on, and especially the daddy issues, the where do I come from, which is a lot of what, if we're talking Marvel, a lot of what Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was doing with Star-Lord's character. You have this question of origins and what does that mean for me in the future. You had that in Man of Steel with Superman trying to figure out where he came from, right? Where he was like, oh, okay, I'm the last son of Krypton. My dad's name is Jor-El, this kind of stuff, right? So Superman has already had that journey, but Aquaman has not yet done that journey at the time of this movie. But if you watch Aquaman, you'll see his further development. But I think it's nice to see a person of Polynesian descent playing Aquaman too, because the connection that Islander people have with the sea is so beautiful and so important to storytelling that it does not make sense for Aquaman necessarily to be a blonde-haired, blue-eyed man. And so I really appreciated Jason Momoa's interpretation.
I agree. And more diversity is always welcome.
And he's also freaking Khal Drogo of the sea. How can you not be into that? I mean, it has everything. Look, I'm not a fan of Aquaman. I honestly think his powers are dumb, but what they're doing with Jason Momoa makes me actually care.
He's the Moana of DC.
He is. He's the Moana of DC. Yes.
They are asking about Wonder Woman. In the movie.
I could talk about days for Wonder Woman. So with this, sorry, go
ahead. He actually pointed out about Wonder Woman in the Snyder Cut is a lot more sexualized than in the Snyder Cut.
Yeah, the Joss cut we do. Yeah,
it does.
So, Wonder Woman has a lot of appeals. I like her as this kind of ancient warrior goddess, and that's often obviously been interpreted as sexy lady. And I appreciate beautiful women. I'm here for sexy women. Gal Gadot doesn't need you to write that in. She's just sexy. So
she just needs to walk in. She doesn't even need to.
Just needs to wear the costume. Literally, her sensuality is already there. There's no need to overdo it. And it's not about that. It's about the fact that she is invulnerable, as a demigod, and has the freaking, the bracelets where she can create this, massive attack. She's proficient in sword and bow and, hand-to-hand combat. She can fly. She has the lasso. She's very, very strong and amazing. And there's really, I think Diana's character is best when she is given a very, very large opponent that is not human that she can attack. The problem with when you have her in Wonder Woman 84, which I don't know if you've seen, Cecilia, which is the second Wonder Woman movie. Like I said, a lot of it is very defensive and a lot of it is trying to stop people from doing things, trying to stop them from attacking. She's best in this kind of end of the world thing. We need you to distract Steppenwolf while, Cyborg works on hacking the mother box.
Mhm.
She's really good. She's the muscle for that. So to have her also be this kind of vixen is quite unnecessary because
Mhm.
the Amazons themselves, especially in the Snyder Cut, you see them as these respected female warriors. We also see a lot more Amazons of color in the Snyder Cut. It's
Mhm.
very nice to see.
Mhm.
Very diverse group of women who they basically live with with old ways and without men, and this kind of self-sustaining female society. And
Mhm.
so to kind of reduce that to sexy lady in Roman looking, Greek looking costume is a very surface level interpretation of Wonder Woman's character that I think we get in the original.
Mhm.
That Snyder is, especially the scenes with the Arrow of Artemis and this connection that she has with her mother, even though she is not in Themyscira, is very much there. And a lot of people don't quite understand too is that she's also essentially banished. She can't necessarily just go back.
Mhm.
This her heart yearning for Themyscira is a huge part of Wonder Woman's character. So when you have Diana, when that line that her mother says, and it's in both of the movies, that men won't know what
But
the
she
arrow
will.
means, but she will.
Mhm.
This is the heart of her character. She remembers and she protects. And that's why Wonder Woman is an important character. She's the connection with this older time, and an older time where everyone came together and fought, right? According to the lore that
Mhm.
Wonder Woman presents, you know, Darkseid tried and he failed because Atlanteans, humans, and Themyscirans and Amazons came together.
Yeah, I actually appreciated a lot that one last scene of her dressed in black and in Greece, looking at the island. Like, it really embodies what you just said. That she actually uh, misses that part of her life.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And
And
she left because there are many reasons she left, because of she didn't want to not have interfere with, well, a hot guy came crashing into Themyscira, which
mhm,
was her love interest in World War One. She
mhm,
realized the world was at war and that she could do something. And for love, she also left for love because she fell in love with a pilot from
mhm,
World War One. So it's really it's a beautiful story of a woman who made a decision, but in the end is very saddened by the fact that it's very possible that she won't ever be with her people again. And Steppenwolf tries to use that against her. We see in
mhm.
this movie where he says, I killed all your sisters. They're all dead. Ha ha ha.
And your
You know,
mother.
yeah,
Mhm,
classic taunting. Um,
mhm,
but but if you understand Wonder Woman's character and you get a lot more in Snyder, you understand why that is so just evil for him to do, because
mhm,
she is someone who her mother is the ruler of Themyscira, and yet she is her connection with it is only a connection of the heart and not a connection of geography or of society. She is now fully in our realm.
mhm. Well, she's been for for a while now. Uh, but well, one of the I kind of forgot. I forgot what I was about to say. I think it had to do with something with this. I think it has had something to do with this comment right here. It says, "Super interesting, Amy. It's true that in more." I remembered. It's true that it's more in character for her to hold back, but it's also frustrating to watch. So she's more entertaining when she can totally be unleashed. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
no, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Wonder Woman is at her best when she's able to fully
Hmm.
unleash her demigod powers.
Hmm.
And so, like I said with 84, and like Aaron is kind of saying, it makes sense. A lot of the situation she's in, there are people around, and sometimes she's even fighting humans, so she can't do her full strength.
Hmm.
But it's really, if you've seen the Justice League animated series, when they do Justice League Unlimited, there's this idea of an original member going with each team. So
Hmm.
Wonder Woman would had a team of kind of B level heroes to go do something. Superman would take another team. Blah blah blah. Um, a lot of times they would send Wonder Woman's team on missions that require a lot of muscle because she's up there with Superman as far as strength. So
Hmm.
to have this, you know, badass feminist symbol not really being able to unleash is doesn't feel quite like a Wonder Woman comic book, a comic book movie that includes Wonder Woman, because she's the big guns, really.
Okay, so now that you mentioned and that I remembered what I said, what I was about to say. Previously, I mentioned that Bruce Wayne is pretty much the logistical leader of the group, while Superman is the moral leader of the group. Where would you put Wonder Woman?
I would put Wonder Woman kind of at a place where she is able to relate to Batman and also able to relate to Superman, because she is technically godly, celestial, but she is also technically human as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that something that's interesting about Wonder Woman's character, because they're the original three, right? Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. They're the original three of the Justice League, and then they bring in more. I really see Diana kind of as the center of the group's understanding of history and understanding of how the world has changed and adapted before, because she has lived so long and because the stories of the Amazon do date back so far. I think she's a lot about not forgetting your history and about learning from it, and being able to recognize the Arrow of Artemis is just one example of that. They do that similarly kind of also in Wonder Woman 1984, where she has the resources to recognize something that is so archaic that others on the earth do not. So she, that's the thing, is that in DC, a very, very common kind of theme is for an alien race to come and be like, oh yeah, we were here before thousands of years ago, right? And Earth was like this, right? And so I think Wonder Woman really represents that continuity from old Greek, mythology to now.
Yeah, Erin says that she connects to the past and brings more historical knowledge and wisdom. And also, one of the things that I perceived in this movie, and a little bit in the other one, and is that she is sort of like the glue,
yeah,
of this relationship between Batman and Superman. She's like
she also checks their toxic masculinity stuff here and there, right? She knows she's strong. She doesn't have to prove it to anyone. She's not going to take it out and measure it. That's not her style.
She's like the mediator of this.
She's the conflict resolution. She's the HR of Justice League. The conflict resolution of the Justice League. You just go to Diana and get it figured out.
Yeah, well, Erin says here precisely what I'm saying, that she's also the heart. Victor joins the group because of her compassion. Well, she kind of connects with him.
Yeah, her connection, and that was something that's also very highlighted in the Snyder Cut, is Wonder Woman connecting with Victor on a level that I don't think the men in the group could have.
Yeah, and she also, Bruce Wayne actually points this out in the Snyder Cut. No, in the Widow Cut, that she is able to bring out the best of the people surrounding her. And like Erin says here, she's a woman in a group of those who isn't afraid of acknowledge feelings, and she actually makes them think about them, realize and acknowledge their feelings. And I think that it's important in a group because, well, yeah, Superman can be the moral of the group, but he isn't human. He doesn't understand this drama.
Yeah,
he's beyond that because of his power, and he grew up to be this overly good person.
Look, if he was the fully heart of the Justice League, then Lois Lane dying wouldn't make him go bad. If that makes sense. If he needs someone, if he's like from Amos from The Expanse, if he needs someone to morally like keep him from going fascist on everyone, I would say Superman is the face of the Justice League to people. Batman is the reason that it works. And then Wonder Woman is the compassion that it needs. Because I would say, Wonder Woman knows what is right and what's wrong. And yeah, if you killed her mom, or if you killed one of the Amazons or someone she loved, she would be furious, but she would not do what Superman does in this alternate timeline
Mm-hmm.
where one person, the woman of the love of his life dies, and then he's like, well, time to be a Nazi then. I mean, like, that's the thing, is you can't count that as the moral center if it's so easily shaken. Then it
Yeah.
has to be Wonder Woman who is the moral center of the
Mhm.
Justice League. Superman is the packageable front face. You can make action figures out of it. You can have, advertisements about it. He's the like PR. And then you
Mhm.
have Batman, who is the logistics and
Yeah.
the whole reason that any of this is happening, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And well, now that you mentioned that about Superman, it got me thinking. And I think that the reason why he goes nuts like that is that, well, he lost his only connection to his humanity, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you would hope he still has his mom and his
Yeah,
childhood
but
in Kansas, and it's so tenuous in the end, I think,
Mhm.
that especially because we get this zombie Superman for a while where he's has his powers but not his memories and not his personality, and then of course it's Lois who brings him out of this. And of course we always love this dynamic between Lois Lane and Clark Kent. I'm not minimizing it. I think it is thematically interesting, but I think it is the fact that we need Lois Lane to bring him back, is kind of the reason that Superman can never fully be the one to make moral decisions in that group, because
Mhm.
he is in the end, an orphan. And even though Diana is away from her people, she does have this groundedness about her that I think Superman could be lacking.
Maybe it's because of his no, because of her ancientness,
Mm-hmm.
that she understands that there are battles that are to be fought and there are battles that are to be ignored. Maybe that's
Yeah, I feel like
huh.
it's like, okay, if you're an Avatar: The Last Airbender fan, I feel like she's Earth, and then earthbending, and then you've got Superman who's firebending. It's very destructive and it's very important in a battle. But then you also then kind of have Batman who is airbending. He's kind of evading attacks and waiting for the right time to strike.
Mhm.
There are very different kind of aspects of battle, and which is why the original three of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman is so interesting and effective
Mhm.
when it comes to storytelling.
Yeah, they're like the Holy Trinity.
Yes. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the mother boxes and the three, I was thinking of the maiden, mother, and crone. There's a lot of actually feminine
Mhm.
aspects with the mother boxes that I thought was kind of interesting, because even though it's a very masculine, if you will, patriarchal drink, uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
this patriarchal, we're going to come and we're going to take over this world. It's very phallic and it's very, strong and masculine. And what are they
Very young.
implanting? They're not implanting the father boxes, they're
Uh-huh.
implanting the mother boxes. The idea of creating or recreating, if you will, because they are unfortunately destroying in order to create. But this idea of the femininity, the creation of a new world through the mother boxes, it's very interesting then that the actual instigators of this conquest then are male, using this feminine energy to
Mhm.
create the world that they want.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, they're pointing out something here in the comments. Jorge is pointing out about the invisibility power of
One
Wonder
of the
Woman.
things that I would have liked to see in Wonder Woman, the Justice League, is her invisibility power, because it appeared. Yeah, so what Jorge is talking about is this idea for her to make objects invisible. So, spoiler alert for Wonder Woman 1984. Please mute for about 30 seconds. Basically, Wonder Woman touches a plane and is able to make it invisible. The invisible jet, it's a whole thing. Wonder Woman's awesome. Yeah, I totally agree, Jorge. I would have liked to have seen that happen, because Wonder Woman 1984 happened in 84, so she has this ability in the
Mhm.
2000s. So that would have been nice to see. I think Jorge is definitely onto something about Wonder Woman and the invincible plane. Why can't we just do it then? Why can't we just have the invisible jet? Wonder Woman fans
I
have
don't
been waiting for this.
know. I don't know.
Just do it.
Maybe the directors think that it's stupid. I don't know. I don't
It's a
know if
little
it
hokey, but
works.
it's so much fun.
It's
So
fun,
much fun.
but I don't know if
It's great in comics. I don't
cinematically,
know if
yeah.
it would it would, yeah. But
Yeah,
I will say
cinematically.
her making things invisible
Hmm.
would have been important. I don't know if she can make people invisible though. It might just be objects. I'm not sure. But yeah, there's I think that Wonder Woman in many ways in both movies was untapped a little bit, I will say.
Hmm.
I do think that she is a much more stronger being, but I do think it's very, very common for this to happen. Batman and Superman overshadow a lot of the other heroes.
Yeah.
It's not just because they're the most lucrative as far as money for DC. I do also think it is naturally a general audience's attraction and interest in white men being the heroes. I do generally think that the audience, especially an American audience, is very used to seeing these white muscular men saving the day. And so to see a woman or a person of color, like in the end, it hasn't been as built up in our culture. And I think that with Snyder using Cyborg so much, using Wonder Woman, and actually having John Jones, the Martian Manhunter, who
Hmm.
does he is a Martian, so he's green technically, but he does he does transform into a person of color. These kinds of things. Having that, it is hopefully starting to get the audience a little bit more used to all sorts of heroes in comics. The Green Lantern, my favorite iteration of the Green Lantern, is a man of color. So, you know, it's good stuff.
You know,
Keep doing it.
I would love to see Latino superheroes out there,
Hmm.
and because
Yes.
when it comes to diversity, I must say that it's more common that we see a black person in on screen than any other race.
Yeah.
And I understand why, but come on, there are other races out there as well. I
Yeah.
mean,
So
it's not all black and white. There are a lot of
DC shows are
shadows
doing better
between.
about this, and I know this is about the
Yes.
movies, but Stargirl, which is on the CW, has a season out. They totally reinterpreted the Justice Society, where
Hmm.
there's Starman is now, they a young girl, and we have this kind of sort of Catman character. I can't remember the exact
Hmm.
name. That is now a Latina lesbian woman. So
Hmm.
you've got some DC is doing a lot better with the shows as far as that. But I think the movies are still a little bit far behind, and I do think that you know the the general kind of everyone knows who Superman is, everyone knows who Batman is.
Hmm.
The fact that Snyder focused us on these character moments with these more B-level characters, that was very, you could say Wonder Woman is up there in the elite, but the stuff that we get with Barry as the Flash, and the stuff that we get with Cyborg and Aquaman as well, it's appreciated to kind of get into these character stories a little bit more rather
Hmm.
than just leaning on Batman and Superman, which everyone knows about.
Yeah. For example, Miles Morales in Marvel as the Spider-Man. I mean, people often laugh or belittle the importance of representation, but as a woman of color myself, I really must say this. It is very important to see to have some heroes to look up to. And for example, I was previously offline mentioning you about my stepson, and he is a huge fan of Marvel comics and all the heroes and all that stuff. But he often complained about not having someone to that truly represented him
Yeah.
until Miles Morales came up to, and
Yeah.
I actually understood this when he said once that he would like to be that he was very glad that there was a colored superhero that he could identify with, and that he one day would like to be an actor and audition for that role. I mean,
Yeah.
that this is the.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we have Batwoman right now on the CW
Mhm.
recast after the first season, and now it's a
Yeah.
woman of color, and there are a lot of young black girls saying they want to be
Hmm.
Batwoman. And also, Guilty Undertaker has a point about Blue Beetle.
Mm-hmm.
has their Blue Beetle as a character who there's basically this. It's called a scarab. It's this attachment, and it attaches to you, and it's an ancient kind of Egyptian technology magic. You know how it gets
Mm-hmm.
with technology and magic in the DC. It's kind of DC universe. It's kind of the same. And so if technology is so sophisticated that we call it magic at that point, and it's this intelligence that gives him this, he's able to fly, and it kind of attaches to his back, and it scans things. It tells him all these things. And yeah, there is there's a version of that called Jamie or Jaime, I believe is his name. I'm scrolling.
Mm-hmm.
Blue Beetle. Yeah, Jaime Reyes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And also, well, and not only in the superhero movies, also in pretty much in general. Aaron here is pointing out about Diego Luna, my fellow Mexican, uh, that he got a lot of positive feedback from the Latino community as Cassian Andor, and I love the fact that he's getting his own show, and I love the fact that he didn't lose his accent.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I believe that he actually over exaggerates a little bit his accent in order to make a statement.
Yeah.
Pretty much like Sofia Vergara is doing, and but she got famous. She was famous prior Modern Family, but she was famous in the Telemundo Univision kind of world. But once she got into Modern Family, that she got a lot of more recognition,
Yeah.
she didn't lose it. She didn't lose her accent and she actually exaggerated it for the same reason that Diego Luna does, and for the same reason that Salma Hayek does. And well, sometimes you get criticized as a person that whose first language is not English. You often get criticized about your accent, and you get pointed out, but they don't really realize what it means that we actually learn another language. to,
Yeah.
yeah,
And a lot of Americans who complain about accents too are monolingual. So it's like,
Mhm,
unless you've tried it yourself, not really a place to talk.
mhm,
But yeah, I really enjoy going to, obviously not now because of passport issues with the global pandemic, but I really appreciate going to Europe and people assuming I'm monolingual, which is fun because I do speak Mandarin Chinese. So it's always fun for people to assume. But yeah, there's this kind of idea of, okay, well, this is just how we're going to tell stories, and you can find other places for representation
mhm,
when representation should be happening everywhere.
yeah,
And like with comics, we have Camilla Khan as Miss Marvel, so a lot of people who are Muslim are really appreciating that. And DC Legends of Tomorrow, which is another show on the CW, has also some Iranian characters, so also kind of diversifying because it growing up, someone who was growing up, especially post 9/11, that there were not very many Muslim characters that are good that we would see
mhm,
on TV.
mhm,
And that matters to kids growing up, especially on the playground getting made fun of, right? If there are
mhm,
positive characters that share their family's background,
mhm,
then that is it can be an impactful moment for them. And obviously I'm white. I'm not really. This is what my
mhm.
friends who are people of color have told me. This is not my own testimonial.
Yeah,
But and
mhm,
just seeing women too on screen for me is nice, and then especially women of color. It's to me it enhances. We saw that also with WandaVision.
mhm.
We saw some people of color just act circles around the rest of the cast, and it's like it's not it's about finding the best person for the part. It's not about being like, oh, okay, well, this person has always been white, therefore we cast a white person.
Yeah, and well, back into the accent thing. Erin is pointing out something very important here, that there are so many touching stories about his accent, what his accent meant to people. Because, well, like I said, yes, you get criticized. You sometimes get the I don't understand what you just said kind of
Yeah.
comments, but actually, why would you have to completely erase your accent? I mean, it's like it's kind of like trying to deny where you're coming from. That is not fair. That is
It's
not
also
fair.
elitist, Cecilia, because I'm from the American South and I had a different accent. This is not
Hmm.
my natural accent, actually. It was much
Hmm.
more Southern drawl, kind of like if you're watching movies about pre-Civil War South or something, that
Yeah.
kind of. It wasn't that bad. I wasn't like a Southern belle, but when I actually mock a Southern accent, people from the South be like, "That was really good." I was like, "Yeah, that's because that's how I used to speak." Now so basically before I went to college, I literally watched YouTube videos. I typed in standard American accent and I learned the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. Like I literally practiced to have this accent. And now it's my natural accent. This is how I speak. But this is not how I spoke for the first 18 years of my life. And
Hmm.
it's very elitist. I thought going to college, people would think I'm dumb because of the accent I have. And that's the kind of
Hmm.
pressure that is also put on L2 learners.
Yeah.
But I did want to share that story though, Cecilia, to emphasize that there are also native English speakers who have to change their accent to
Hmm.
be taken, for me to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
so
not
and
fair.
no one told me to do that. Let me be very clear.
Hmm.
Society doesn't tell you to do things. It makes fun of you for one thing until you change. And that's
Hmm.
how society corrects these kinds of what they elitist, a very elitist view of what they consider to be lesser than.
Yeah.
And so, when there's this idea of, oh, can't call whatever comics, they're fictional characters anyway, what does it matter? It really matters to real people, and I think that's all that matters. Cyborg's
Hmm.
story, matters to a lot of people, and especially to, young men of color, and that's not a bad thing. That's
Hmm.
that's something special that we should hold on to.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we have reached
Yeah, that was
almost
our
2 hours.
soapbox about diversity in comic book films. Thanks for coming to our TED Talk, everyone.
you know, I now that we touched that point, I was very hesitating of doing this show on in English because it's not my first language for starters, and also I also was a little self-conscious about my accent. I know that it's not that strong as Diego Luna's or Salma Hayek's. It's a little fainted, but maybe it's because I grew up in the border and I
Mi español es horrible. Like, really. My Spanish is terrible. Your
uh-huh.
English is great. This is totally fine, Cecilia. But the pressures on you must be kind of,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's me. Well, I know that there are a lot of people that may make fun on comments or something like that, but it's people that I don't know and it's people that I don't care. But it's mostly me putting pressure on me. So when I don't know at which point in my life I realized that it doesn't matter, that I said, sure, let's go for it. I'm missing a lot of awesome people to talk to and to share with just because of an insecurity that I have. So I'm glad I shred that. And now
Yeah,
that
but to
yeah.
Cecilia's Spanish speaking listeners, like, lo siento, I'm sorry, my Spanish is not better. Like, I can't do it. I can If this were in Chinese, I'd have a better chance, than if it were than if it were in Spanish. So I apologize, but yeah, I like that you've created this, or you've created a place for Spanish speaking nerds to come, and that's so exciting. And so I'm glad to be little English sliver, be a part of that.
Yeah, that's always awesome. It's always awesome to share with people of different places. I actually work with people from different parts of Latin America, and it's always so fun because even in Spanish there are some expressions. There's some slang that, for example, Argentinians have that we don't, and we don't know what they mean, and they don't know what we mean, and it's pretty fun. It's
Yeah,
awesome. Hmm.
I love
It's
it.
awesome. All right, so we've reached almost 2 hours of discussion, so it's time to wrap it up. Final thoughts? Any final thoughts about this movie?
Yeah, so like I said, this is naturally going to be a compare and contrast kind of analysis, and it has been. because there was something released before that was the Justice League, and now we get a different Justice League. But I think overall, just because I grew up such a fan of the animated series, I had a lot of hopes for this movie. And in 2017 or 2018, whenever it came out, the Joss Whedon cut, I was a very unhappy DC fan, and it's hard because Marvel fans get a lot of movies that are really great,
Mhm.
and DC fans only get animated series and TV shows that are great, and we
And the
haven't
Nolan movies
gotten.
about Batman.
Yes,
Yeah.
and a big thing is Batman. So,
Uh-huh.
which is great, but Batman is not my favorite. It's like The Flash and Wonder Woman is what I've always leaned on to growing up, and it is nice to have that kind of the live action embodiment of what I grew up enjoying, which was the Justice League. And I do think that the Snyder Cut can hopefully encourage people to do more with DC, because Darkseid, I mean, they haven't even scratched the surface of him. He
Mhm.
is one of the best villains in comic book history. And so I think that a lot more can be done. And pardon me, F. Joss, Zack Snyder has left a lot of room for future iterations of this. But I think the Justice League, as he has created it in this movie, it does create the future for, because he did introduce Martian Manhunter, and you can have future characters. I think that it's left room for a lot more DC adventures, and
Mhm.
I think that overall, you know, I'm a DC fan except for X-Men. I really do like Marvel, especially X-Men, but DC is kind of where growing up where I really felt a
Mhm.
lot of my nerd energy go toward. So it is nice to have that pay off a little bit, because my friends who are mostly Marvel fans are always making fun of me for being a DC fan because the movies are so terrible. So
I
I'm like,
get it.
okay,
Yeah.
Zack Snyder's Justice League, solid movie. And that is more than anything what I want to thank Zack Snyder for, is he took what I knew could be a good movie and he gave us a solid movie. And I've seen a lot of articles, a lot of opinion articles. They're like, oh, Zack Snyder's Justice League, it's just as confusing as Joss Whedon, but longer. And I totally disagree with that take. It makes
I
the whole
Me
movie
too.
makes
Yeah.
way more sense.
Mhm.
And I think that what we got is finally what Snyder envisioned. And even though I feel for him with the loss of his daughter, is that, I'm glad that he got to have his creative outlet, because it needed to be done, especially because, DC fans have been craving this for so long.
And it's also, it can also work as a closure for that part of her life, his life. I mean, because this movie is going to be inevitably connected to the death of his daughter.
Yeah.
So finishing this movie was also closing a door there to pain, I believe. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel it
This
that
was
way.
yeah, it was really something left undone that he needed
Hmm.
to do. He needed to finish this chapter of his life. And I won't this is the very end, so I'm not going to get into this too much, but Joss Whedon is problematic on so many levels because of him personally as a human being, his views
Yeah.
on women and people of color.
Hmm.
So if you like the Joss cut, good for you, but he is a terrible human being. He's a monster and he is an asshole.
Hmm.
And he deserves to be, for me, canceled, and you can do whatever you want with Joss Whedon's future works, but I will not be consuming Joss Whedon content in the future. And that's how I feel. And Zack Snyder
Understandable.
has not. I mean, I could wake up tomorrow and Zack Snyder turns out he killed 20 children. I don't know, but right as of right now, I like my art made by people who I think have a good moral compass, and I don't feel that way with Joss Whedon. So I don't if I don't trust the director with the characters that I love, then
Hmm.
I'm automatically at a defensive position that I was not at with with Zack Snyder.
Yeah, well, that's understandable. And well, final thoughts for me. Well, I think that this movie, the release of this movie, means that possibly we can get to see better told stories in the DC universe, because this movie is kind of like the proof to all those executives who were afraid and were nervous about this version of the movie, that they put a lot of chaperones for for Snyder in order to prevent him from doing something so crazy that it wouldn't sell. Now this movie has proven that they were wrong.
Yes, especially right now. People are not look, I've gotten one of the 2 shots for vaccinations, but I'm not going to be going to the movie theaters for a while, and I haven't in over a year. So you give me something on HBO Max, you make it 4 hours long, I'm watching that thing. And that's the thing is real, fans and people who know real fans who are like, okay, fine, Amy, shut up. I'll watch I'll watch Justice League, right? They want to enjoy the characters. And when you have a movie about 6 superheroes, you cannot make it 2 hours. So the 4 hours to me totally makes sense if you want enough backstory for everyone. And even then, I think that Zack Snyder could have made a 2-hour movie that was better than what Joss did. Just deciding what stays and what goes. It's very obvious seeing the Snyder Cut that he had the better discretion on that.
Okay, well, so we have reached the end of this discussion. Thank you so much, Amy, for joining me.
Gracias, Cecilia. I was so excited to be here. I've been waiting for my invitation. So
well, the thing is that this English version of my podcast is happening every 2 episodes in Spanish. So it's the wait is kind of a little long. I'm planning in the future to make it one episode, one Spanish, one English.
So every other English, every other Spanish. Yeah, that makes sense.
But for now, we're gonna keep it this way. And well, finally, Amy, if you would be so kind to mention all these viewers about your projects.
Yes, so I have a podcast and a YouTube channel. So you can find me at youtube.com/Aemy Blackfyre. If you search Aemy Blackfyre, it'll try to change it to Army Blackfyre, like the Blackfyre Army. So make sure it's AEMY, Blackfyre with a Y. Make sure you click on search for Aemy Blackfyre and not Army Blackfyre, and then you will find me. And I'm also available on all podcast platforms, including Podbean. I talk about a lot of stuff. I talk about A Game of Thrones, Avatar: Last Airbender, His Dark Materials, The Witcher, X-Men, The Poppy War. I talk a lot about nerd things, and I am going to start having people on for just random stuff. I'm randomly wanting to talk about the 1997 Cinderella movie with Whitney Houston and Brandy. I go crazy, whatever I want to talk about. So I have a great time over there. I also have a blog that is kind of a companion of that, which is a song, aswafchineselit.wordpress.com. So ASOIAF chineselit.wordpress.com. I am a Chinese literature PhD student, so I do focus a lot on Eastern symbolism, but my guests that come on talk about all sorts of wonderful nerdy stuff. So please check out all of my links
that you can find in the description of this video. So thank you all so much for watching and for for putting up with my sometimes I realize that I sometimes have trouble speaking even in Spanish because, well, sometimes I forget what I'm about to say. But it's this problem is usually a little bit more evident in English. So thank you so much for bearing with me. And thanks so much for watching. Thank you so much for your like and your subscription if you're watching in YouTube, and your follow if you are listening a few hours later in your favorite podcast platform. And I will invite you to join the Geeksters group. You can find it in my Geeksterilia page on Facebook, where we share more memes and this kind of things, this kind of discussions. It's mostly memes, but you're open to open a discussion in this group. And well, thank you so much, and may the force be with you.